Hello everybody, and welcome to a Liverpool Echo Blood Red Big Forum special. And that's easy for me to say. I'm the Echo's LFC writer, Theo Squires. I'm your host today, and we are live on Facebook, I believe. So get your comments in, like, subscribe. I think that's the normal rubbish we say for this sort of stuff, isn't it? It's what the youth of today say. I'm not sure if that's quite relevant. But joining me today are my delightful colleagues, Paul Gorst and Ian Doyle, our chief LFC writer and our Liverpool correspondent. I've got those titles right, haven't I, gentlemen? I should know them by now.
Right way around. Yeah.
But yeah, we're live. Say hello to the people.
Afternoon. Good evening.
And normally we'll do a big forum. We've got loads of questions to get through, which I'll explain more in detail in a little bit. But first, Liverpool actually signed a player today, Alexis Mac Allister. Price is varying quite a bit depending on reports. So I'll get both your opinions on that first. Firstly, with you, Gorsty, what are the details with this transfer?
Yeah, I mean, it's if you go back to the press conference of the Southampton game, Jurgen Klopp said, didn't he, that he was hopeful of concluding his business within 6 or 7 weeks. And less than 2 weeks into that, Liverpool have got the man. I mean, probably the primary transfer target post Jude Bellingham, the man who probably emerged as one of the best midfielders in the Premier League over the last 12 months. Thought he's been fantastic in the Brighton side. Have recorded their highest ever Premier League finish of 6. They're going to be in the Europa League next season for the first time in their history. He's just 6 months off winning a World Cup for Argentina in Qatar. And I think he probably did as much as anyone else other than Lionel Messi to help Argentina win their first World Cup since 1986. So, yeah, Liverpool have moved quickly to secure the deal. We believe it's somewhere between 35 and 45 million, don't we? Liverpool keeping the feet on the wraps, shall we say, at the moment. But credit to Julian Ward, the outgoing sporting director, and Liverpool's recruitment team as a whole, because they've unearthed the existence of a release clause in his contract and probably got him for maybe around about half what would be his value in this kind of market. So it's not necessarily a cost-cutting move for Liverpool, because I still believe he's somebody firmly wanted at the top of their wish list. But the fact that they're bringing in a 24-year-old Argentinian international World Cup winner for a relatively modest fee means that Liverpool have really got the ducks in a row in this one. And it's an exciting transfer to kick off what's going to be a busy summer.
Now, Doyle, midfield has been the talking point for most of the season. It has been a concern. Many fans will have felt that they should have signed someone last year. So the feeling is they're better late than never. You were one of the few that did predict it was going to be a difficult season for Liverpool.
Yes.
Do you reckon
I didn't say difficult season.
You didn't think they were going to win a trophy?
I didn't think they'd win anything. Yeah, I thought it'd be a season transition, you're right. But I did say they'd still finish second. I wasn't expected to finish fifth. And at the time, with the midfielders, I don't want to go over this a million times over.
We've done that enough times this season.
You can kind of see why Liverpool did what they did. They just didn't expect all of the fears that fans had over the fitness levels of certain midfielders to then all, sadly come true. And we know what happened there. But yeah, in terms of getting the business done early, Klopp likes to do that. As Ghosty said, in 6 or 7 weeks is the start of, when they come back at the AXA and start looking towards the new season. So, Mac Allister did an interview with the Liverpool website today. He even said, I'm glad that it's all been sorted because I want to get in first thing, which will probably be, I think, for internationals, I think it'll be July the 12th or 13th, won't it? The rest of the non-internationals start on July the 8th, which is a Saturday. Yeah. And I think it's the middle of the next week that they'll then, the rest of them will join.
Not quite as early as Burnley.
No, they're already back out. Yeah, that's a bit strange. Yeah, they got something to look forward to be fair. With Mac Allister, it's an interesting one. I know there's been a bit of talk about the fee, and you can certainly see why Liverpool turned to him if they had knowledge of this release clause. We know that he signed the contract in October, I think it was, and my personal view is that the reason that no one's really mentioning the fee is because it might upset the Brighton fans a little bit, because it's probably a lot lower than the value that he is now. But bear in mind, when he signed the contract, he was within 7 or 8 months of going out of contract, and he hadn't actually played in the World Cup, and Brighton hadn't had the season that they're about to have. So that's all bolstered up his value in terms of perception. But his contract, he's still led to believe. Well, we're led to believe it's 35 million, but as Ghosty said, we've seen reports 35, 40, 45. Some were saying as high as 55, but the fact that it's not been announced suggests that it's probably quite low. And I think when Bellingham's gone for upwards of, if all the add-ons happen, £115 million, you can see why Liverpool
and Manchester City, they both walked away from that one because it was quite pricey. So the other thing is that Liverpool now, assume that they had the money to buy a Bellingham, which you have to assume they would have done. They've now got all that money left over to spend on the other players, which is precisely the reason why they perhaps stepped away from Bellingham, because they knew they needed more than just the one midfielder. They need 2, possibly 3. Might need a centre back. So he's not going to be. But Mac Allister's not going to be the only midfielder Liverpool sign this summer. There'll be 1, possibly 2 more, and just be interesting to see what kind of the profile of the player, because Mac Allister, he's only 24, isn't he? He's a World Cup winner, and you look at that, and he's got 3 years of Premier League experience, which is another thing that he mentioned in his interview. He said, "Well, it took me a year to adapt to it," which, when you bear in mind, that's what Darwin Núñez has just had. It's just very interesting all around.
How much have you both written a World Cup winner in the last few days?
Yeah,
Milking that one, hasn't he?
There's not been many Liverpool players who've been on Liverpool's books who's won the World Cup. I think it was Roger Hunt, Ink Allen, and Jerry Byrne got medals afterwards for the 1966.
There's a couple that were joined after they won it, weren't they? Or left before.
Yeah, there's Riedler had won it, hasn't he?
Spain lads.
Yeah, and the Spanish lads, yeah.
Yeah, the last kind of World Cup winner who Liverpool had on the books was Reina and Torres, wasn't it? So Reina, I guess, as he stayed longer. But I think you make an interesting point there, Doyle, about the fee and about how it can be spread more on other transfer targets. I mean, loads of Liverpool fans have been, saluting the kind of recruitment team for the price that he's been brought in at. Whether it's 35 million or 45 million, either way, it's a bargain, isn't it, in this climate? But I don't actually think it matters to supporters whether he's cost 35 million or whether he's cost 70 million, unless the money that's being saved is then siphoned off to other targets. That has to be the case for Liverpool, I think, because otherwise they're just arguing to save money that will just be replenished for areas that fans don't care about, essentially, if you see what I mean. They're saving, say for example, Mac Allister's market value is 60 million. So Liverpool saving 15 to 20, 25 million there. That has to be used now on another midfielder or a centre-back or whatever else for it to be seen as the kind of brilliant deal that it should be.
I mean, we're just guessing, but I would be very surprised if Liverpool didn't do that. And if they didn't do that, then you're right. Then it wouldn't just be the fans who are a bit upset. There'd be lots of questions asked probably by the manager as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is all very lovely because it's going to fit into the questions I'm about to ask you as part of the big forum.
We've done this before, you see, Theo. We just set
it's almost as though you've seen them before you come in.
It's almost as we discussed it earlier, yeah.
But yeah, I've been given this big list of questions. Sadly, one of them isn't what is a big forum. So I'm going to have to try and explain what it is. I believe we've got a questionnaire that's gone out. The link should be on the screen. If not, and it's not working swimmingly, it will be in the description. You can click that and basically have your say on pretty much everything. Liverpool is a big talking point at the moment, isn't it, in terms of transfers, management, history of the club, etc., etc. Now, Doyle and Gorst are going to cover some of these questions now with their own opinions and insights.
Opinions, then.
Opinions. And the first one we've touched on already is in terms of recruitment. Now, the question I think on the forum was, what is the priority position that Liverpool need to strengthen? Well, we already know it's midfield.
Yeah.
They've already made that first move. It's Mac Allister. But how many more players after Mac Allister do you think Liverpool need this summer?
I'll go first. I reckon 3, 2 midfielders and a centre-back. Anything else after that depends on who leaves, such as if Kelleher goes, they need a goalkeeper.
I'm looking at it and thinking it's not necessarily going to be a numbers game in terms of 3 out, so it's going to be 3 in, because, let's face it, Naby Keita barely played last season. Oxlade-Chamberlain only played slightly more minutes. Arthur Melo didn't kick a ball. So Liverpool have lost 4 midfielders, but I don't think they need 4. Stefan Bajcetic is going to move up into the first team setup. I'd be hesitant to call him like a new signing because that phrase annoys a lot of people, and rightly so. Certainly after Mac Allister, 2 more midfielders. I'm not as desperate for centre backs as perhaps. So
I think they'll sign a centre back. I think they'll get one in.
Klopp was asked it, wasn't he, in one of his later press conferences?
By the way, it looks as though you are announcing the signing of me and Paul. I quite like that.
This is the throwback to the Rafa days, isn't it? We'd announce them all in one go.
There's a midfield player that you don't
Well, next on the
That's
list, we've got the sporting director and the impact he's had. Now, this is this weird handover period where Julian Ward has been quite hands-on with Mac Allister coming in, from what I understand. But Schmachter's going to get all the praise because he's the one who's come in and got it over the line, so to speak. But yeah, how happy are you to see Liverpool get it done quite quickly in terms of finally sorting out the sporting director? We've touched on it before, whether it's a short-term deal and everything.
Yeah.
But it's one where he's got a lot of experience. You expect this to be a start of a successful summer for Liverpool.
Yeah, I think it points to the kind of the way the club has run more than the individuals in the roles. I was quite critical of the confusion that was going on behind the scenes earlier in the season with Ward handing in his resignation, Ian Graham doing similar, 2 big roles in recruitment that need filling, and for months it was just radio silence, wasn't it? And then obviously Will Spearman stepped up to become the head of research. There's a little bit of an appointment from within, and then George Schmacher, who I'd hazard a guess to say no one had heard of 6 weeks ago, he's come in to replace Julian Ward. But despite the kind of turnover behind the scenes, Liverpool still very much acting the way they have done in recent years. You know, they've got Mac Allister over the line within 2 weeks of the Premier League season finishing. Very much similar to the way they've been operating in recent times. When you look at the move for Gakpo, that was thrashed out of the 3 days between Christmas Eve and Boxing Day. Fabinho, Jota, you know, these types of deals that went really under the radar until it was time to announce them, and Liverpool have done similar here, really. So, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment for Schmacher, and it's the biggest role of his career. He's actually come out of retirement to take it, so he probably felt that he couldn't turn it down when Liverpool have come knocking on his door. But we understand, don't we, that most of the legwork was done by Julian Ward, so perhaps, you know, one final feather in his cap before he leaves, and now it's up to Schmacher to pick up the baton.
Anything to add? Well, you're quite happy with Gorsty covering it there?
I think it's fair to say this is a Ward signing, certainly as Gorsty said. So I don't think Schmacher would even begin to claim any of the credit for this.
You
one.
might try.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, but the next couple of signings will primarily, you would think, it'd be on him to, you know, get over the line, whether it's through negotiations or even spotting a player. Although I suspect that if Liverpool has started to change sites or unearthing players at this time of the, you know, so late until just before the transfer window, something's gone wrong, they'll have their list. We know they've got the list. They'll be working through it and deciding what's what, and then that's where Schmacher will come into his own, because we know that he's very good at negotiating and finding players who we can extract best value from, which is exactly what FSG like.
Although our suggestions when he was appointed that it helped with the German market, and we have seen plenty of links with players in Bundesliga like Gravenberch, Kone. I think his sons are currently been appointed. So maybe that's one to watch there. But from recruitment in the months ahead, the weeks ahead, to recruitment last season, this is the next question on the list. How do you seamless? How do you rate Liverpool's recruitment from last year? Because I see it as one of 2 ways, isn't it? Last summer hasn't aged well, but revamping the attack, they've actually done that really well over the past 18 months. Yeah,
it depends if your glass is half full or half empty, doesn't it? I think Liverpool coming off the back of last season, when you went so close to winning 4 trophies and it seemed like, you know, no one could do any wrong. It was just about adding pieces here and there, wasn't it? Fabio Carvalho came in as a young player with loads of potential, who probably wasn't expected to play probably as much as he did, really, given the drop-off that we've seen elsewhere. Darwin Núñez coming into an attack that had just lost Sadio Mane, and Calvin Ramsey as a young right back just to play kind of cup games, and even he's been snake bit by injuries, hasn't he? So, I mean, a year on, big potential in Núñez. It's going to be a big season for him. Carvalho yet to work out, but still loads of time on his side, and Ramsey not too concerned about long term. I'm sure he will show that he's a decent player going forward for the cup game. So are we rating it out of 10?
Yeah, I think on the forum it's rating it out of 100, but that just seems a bit strange. Yeah, for some of these questions. So I'll let you do it out of 10.
6.
You're going 6. What about you, Doyle?
Well, of course, the big thing is that I don't think anyone was that particularly worried about the 3 players that they did sign. It's about the 1 player they didn't, which was a midfielder, which, you know, in retrospect, even though at the time, as I said before, I could understand why they did it. Obviously, it was a mistake, although, it was a mistake, wasn't it? They basically waited for... They only had players that they wanted Tchouameni, he decided to go elsewhere, so they quite clearly thought we can get a very good chance of getting Bellingham, and didn't get him. So probably 6 as well. But it's very hard to say because, as Gorst just mentioned, Ramsey's hardly played, Carvalho's hardly played, and Núñez, I think we'll get a better judgment on him next season. And don't forget that there was also the signing of January Gakpo. Yeah. So you can't just say last summer Gakpo was a very good signing.
Yeah, in the last three windows, Liverpool signed Luis Diaz, Cody Gakpo, and Darwin Núñez, and they're going to be 3 vital cogs of our attack for the next 5 years or so, aren't they?
Was the virtually impossible job, wasn't it? Replacing Firmino, replacing Mane, and here we are. It's not really a concern for Liverpool. It's just how would you have looked at it 2 months ago? Núñez was still playing, he was still scoring 2 months ago. But then Gakpo hit the ground running, and recently we've had the rumours, stronger than rumours, that Carvalho is going to go in the summer. We will stick with Núñez. The question we got down is, do you think he'll eventually come good at Anfield? No, I think that's a little bit harsh. I think he has already come good. So really the question should be, will he get even better?
Yeah, I mean, 15 goals. It's another one where it depends entirely on your viewpoint, doesn't it? Because he scored 15 goals in his debut season at Liverpool, which is a more than respectable return. Liverpool's second top scorer. But then there are elements to his game that clearly need work. If he takes a few more of those chances that he gets, because he seems to get 2 or 3 chances every game, if he takes a few more of those, a little bit more clinical and ruthless with his finishing, he's going to be a bit of a goal machine, isn't he? I don't necessarily think he's going to be first choice next season, which may be a problem in itself, given that he's one of the most expensive players ever at Liverpool. But I think it might be a horses for courses approach, whether it's going to be Gakpo through the middle, Jota through the middle, Núñez with some spacing behind the back line. Viewed in isolation, I can see why people are a little bit concerned, but ultimately, as part of a 5-man forward line next season, I think he's going to be a really exciting option.
Big game player, though. You look at it, scored 2 against United, scored up at Newcastle, scored at Leeds, scored at Arsenal. These are away grounds where most players, some of them just never score at these stadiums, and he's just come in and done that. I think Gorst is right. If he can just take, even if he takes, against Aston Villa away and Man City away, that was in fact the same week, wasn't it? Just after Christmas, he must have had about 8 or 9 chances where he was not quite clean through on goal, but he had a very good chance. Didn't take them, and if he takes half of them, he's on 20 goals. And then suddenly, no one's thinking, there's still not that many players in the Premier League players last season who scored more goals than him. I can't remember off the top of my head now, but I mean, I think he was like 4th or 5th at one point, but he obviously got the injury towards the end and he didn't really play that much. That's my only concern would be that in that run of 11 games where Liverpool were unbeaten, he hardly started any of them. And I think that would be a slight worry because quite clearly he's not quite tactically there yet. And I think that might be partly down to his command of English, which isn't the best from what we're led to believe. So if he can improve that, and he's had another year in England, then we saw at Benfica that after a bit of a wobbly first season, he kind of hit the ground running after that. Liverpool will hope that as well. And again, it will be dependent where he plays. I suspect he'll be on the left wing most of the time.
Yeah. There was the game against Fulham was an interesting one because I don't think I've ever seen a player work so hard but be so off the pace in terms of the quality.
But then he still won the penalty, didn't he?
Yeah, he was giving us absolute all, but every time he got it, it was a heavy touch or, whatever it was. And the crowd were desperate to get behind him. He was winning throw-ins and the crowd chanting his name. And
we've had conversations about this.
They're determined for him to succeed, and I think he's gone on record a few times as saying second season is where he tends to, really hit the goal trail. So, yeah, I can understand some apprehension around him, but I think he's a really exciting player.
Now, moving on to Liverpool's overall season, Mohamed Salah was quite emphatic. It was a failure. Didn't win any major silverware, didn't qualify for the Champions League.
Didn't bother dressing it up, did he?
Are you a bit more forgiving with that sentiment, or how do you rate the overall season?
Well, as I said before, I didn't expect them to win anything, but I didn't expect them to not finish in the top 4. So it's a failure. However, I think we were talking about it yesterday. Liverpool only lost 2 of the last 18 Premier League games. 3 times they lost back-to-back Premier League games, which is very unusual under Klopp. And if they draw those 3 or 3 of those games, or just win one of them, then suddenly they would be a point nearer to Newcastle. And you're looking at the last couple of games, they wouldn't have been. I know they drew the last 2 games against Villa and against Newcastle, against Southampton, but I'm pretty sure if they needed to win, they would have won them both. And so it's just, small margins, as it always tends to be with Liverpool. And I think that, they just never really, they left themselves too much to do because the first half of the season. So from that point of view, is a failure because of the way that it ended up. But it's a qualified failure in the sense that you can see there's lots of things that have started to come right, and they just didn't do it quickly enough.
Yeah, I look at a team who went unbeaten in 11 games for the end of the season. I think they won 9 of them. And the fact that they still finished outside the top 4 shows you where they went wrong during the season.
I think it was 7 wins actually, 7 wins and 4 draws out because they drew against Chelsea and they started with 2
Chelsea
draws.
Started
2 draws, ended with 2 draws.
So I don't think you can dress it up any other way. The fact that Liverpool went from getting 92 Premier League points and finishing a point off the champions to dropping out to their lowest finish since 2016, I don't think you can call that anything other than a failure, really. If it's black or white, failure or success, it's a failure.
Are we rating out of 100?
You can do if you want. I think we're sticking with 10s, but on
Right,
forum it's 100.
I'd say 4 for the first half and 7 for the second half.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Yeah,
which means 5.5.
That January period was a killer, wasn't it, for Liverpool? When they lost to Wolves, Brighton, Brentford.
There was so much positives and optimism after the break when they'd done the mid-season camp. You're thinking we've got players back from injury, can push on now.
And then they got injured
They got
straight
worse.
away. Diaz got injured, Van Dijk got injured. And then you suddenly realised the World Cup players were a bit tired.
Yeah, I think Van Dijk's absence for January has been massively overlooked, to be honest. I think, I said to you yesterday, didn't I, if he was fit for that January, Liverpool wouldn't have lost 3-0 at Wolves, 3-0 at Brighton. And had he not gone off at half-time against Brentford, possibly forced their way back into the game, I don't know. But, it's all ifs and buts. But that was certainly an injury that hurt Liverpool.
But one of the positives this season was the academy players or the younger players. Look at Curtis Jones has finished the season, Basetic before he got injured. Now, the question we've got down, which I think is a bit awkwardly worded, is would you...
got a critical the person right before me. Come on.
Would you mind if academy players found it harder to get a chance in the first team next season due to Liverpool signing more players? Now, you're both academy regulars. You've seen the likes of Ben Doak shine at youth level this year, and there's been a few more like that. So, do you want them to not play for the first team because Liverpool signed an extra 3 or 4 players? Let's have a more sensible variation of that question.
Of course, no. Why would you want that? If you can get academy players through, and if they're good enough, then you play, and then obviously it saves them a lot of money. And of course, they have a lot of players who come through the academy have a kind of a stronger link to the club. So you don't necessarily have to be homegrown. Like they could just come through from 16, 17, 18. Look at Harvey Elliott. Okay, admittedly he's a massive Liverpool fan, and he didn't come through the academy, so not a very good example. But you know what I'm trying to say? Is that if they spent a lot more time developing away from the first team, they're going to appreciate it, certainly at the beginning bit, a lot more than, say, a signing that's coming in. And if they've got the talents, then Klopp's shown a million times over that he'll give them a chance. If they're good enough, then they stay in the team.
Yeah, one of my favourite aspects of last season was watching Liverpool in the UEFA Youth League. Ben Doak and...
Maybe not in Naples, it was a bit hot there, wasn't it?
Ben Doak and Oakley Cannoneer and Trent Conway-Doherty. Just an exciting, fearless young team that just went for it. And every game they're involved in was an exciting one, wasn't it? We were there and we battered Ajax at the Kirby, and then we were there at... Was it St Johnstone's ground?
Partick
Thistle, in Glasgow. That was another great game.
Yeah, that was a good game. Was it 4-3?
Yeah,
4-3.
He
scored. Down to 10.
Yeah, someone got sent off. It was Lee Jonas.
Yeah, Lee Jonas. Yeah.
And Ben Doak was the outstanding performer in pretty much all of those games. It almost became, when you're writing your analysis piece, you're going to do something on Doak because he's always making something happen. So you kind of set that aside as one of your points, and you're watching him more closely. And I'd love to see him play a little bit more next season. I think he come on against Villa didn't he, on Boxing Day, and he's shown Luca Dean them clean pair of heels when he did the step over near the touchline, and he's just so fearless for such a young player.
I'd say that's one thing they can take advantage of the Europa League. Yeah, because they can give, I'd imagine, less so in the knockout stages, but in the group stage, can't imagine they're going to be prepared against the strongest of opposition. So it is an opportunity for some of those players to get minutes.
The only problem for him is he plays with Mo Salah players. He's probably not looking ahead thinking in 5 years that'll be my spot. He's probably wanting to play in the next 12 to 18 months, isn't he? So we might have to find a new string to his bow, maybe off the left.
And also Salah will be quite keen to play in the Europa League and
Exactly,
score about 15 goals in group stage.
Well, it's a bit awkward for, I think, Doak in the Europa League anyway, because he's not actually been at the club long enough to be on the list B. So he'd have to,
here he goes.
He'd have to be registered properly. So
you have to be careful because you're an FSG apologist if you talk about homegrown talent.
But yeah, he'd have to be registered properly in their squad. So that's all dependent on what they do transfer-wise, if they actually get the space to free him up. There's no way I can make this next transition seamless. It's a very big question. How do you view FSG's ownership of Liverpool overall? Now, fans are obviously going to...
You're an FSG apologist, of course.
Yeah.
Okay,
you made it work.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's obviously going to be very differing views on this from the supporters. Like, they haven't signed the midfielder last summer. They've not got Jude Bellingham. They've not gone and rivaled City or Newcastle, Real Madrid, PSG and transfer-wise. But they are the owners that they're here when they won the Premier League, when they won the Champions League. How do you view this overall? I suppose we should do stadium as well. They're seeing as they've got a stand that's being rebuilt at the moment. But yeah, how do you view the overall ownership?
Big picture, I think Liverpool are quite fortunate to have the ownership group that they do have. You look at what they've done since 2010, obviously brought in Jurgen Klopp on the football side of things, which is set in motion the framework for everything that's followed, but also the kind of football operations team behind the scenes, which is second to none, really. And obviously Michael Edwards was a big part of that, who was another kind of FSG appointment, wasn't he? Off the pitch, £250 million worth of infrastructure in the Access Training Centre, the main stand and the Anfield Road. Just as we come to recall, we've just had the news that Liverpool have actually repurchased Melwood, haven't they, for £13 million, which will delight people who were devastated to see Liverpool kind of disassociate from that famous base. Won every trophy there is to win, or every top-level trophy there is to win during their tenure. Obviously, the Premier League, the Champions League, Club World Cup, which was the first ever one in Liverpool's history. So I think big picture, they have to be considered as good custodians. They've made mistakes along the way, of course. They have the trademark situation, the furlough scheme that was quickly reversed, the Super League debacle, the ticket prices. So there's been missteps along the way, but they've always been quick to accept that, they haven't kind of read the room properly there and U-turned on them. So generally, you have to consider them as good owners. I think when you start getting bogged down in the minutiae of not spending in certain transfer windows here or there, that is when you can sort of open them up to a little bit of criticism. But there's no divine right for Liverpool to be winning absolutely everything that they go into. That's obviously the plan, but other teams are trying to do exactly the same. So sometimes it just doesn't work, does it? But I think at certain times we probably could have been a little bit more or less parsimonious, shall we say, though?
Great word.
Yeah,
great word.
Loosen the purse strings a bit more. But ultimately, overall, I'd say that they have been more good than bad.
When you look at the ownerships across the top end of the Premier League at the moment, there's a lot of ill feeling towards Daniel Levy at Spurs. United are in the process of a takeover. City, I suppose, are untouchable considering they're in such a good state. But the last couple of years, Newcastle have been taken over. There's been a failed bid for Arsenal. We've seen how Chelsea hasn't quite gone to plan yet. At least with FSG, there is some stability there. But they've been a big part of the club.
Well, they've been there for 13 years.
Yeah, they've done so much on and off the pitch.
If you're somewhere for 13 years, you're not going to get through 13 years without making any mistakes. So I think we have to bear that in mind. And they have kind of learnt from them. I think what's interesting for me is that I agree with everything that Paul just said. However, there is that kind of acknowledgement from FSG themselves in the past 9 months. I think it is that they've probably taken them as far as they can under this model, and they need some outside investment. And of course, what they've done is they've kind of certainly the expectations of people who believe that Liverpool need more investment. They have kind of hinted that it's coming, it's on its way. We've identified them, and not happened yet. And it's come up to this transfer window. The whole Bellingham situation, whether or not he would have actually wanted to join Liverpool in the end because they went in the Champions League, we don't know. We don't know at all. But if it comes round to the next summer transfer window and they still haven't got this investment, then it's going to be a bit difficult because we don't know what situation Liverpool will be in there. So I think it's kind of on them now. They're the ones that have said, we're not open for a full sale, which they kind of, wouldn't say they rode back on, but certainly that kind of initial move again, they kind of like backtracked on or made sure that people didn't think that was the case. But they have said they're looking for outside investment. You've seen that United still haven't sold the club. And, and that's, again, it's been around about the same amount of time, 7 months. And there's a very, very small pool of people who can afford top-level Premier League clubs, as United are finding out. And so to try and get the right ones in is difficult. FSG probably realised that. That's why they want the outside investment. There's a kind of a sense of having the cake and eating it, because I would assume they would still want to remain, in control. And it's like, what reward is it for the people who are investing? But they can just say, well, look, we took over the club in this state. It's now this state. It's now, what was it? The 5th most valuable brand? Or it depends who you believe, doesn't it? I don't necessarily think that Man City are the most valuable club in the world, I'll be honest. I think...
valuable club brand, which is different to valuable in terms of...
And also different to brand as well. Yeah. Anyway, the point being is that Liverpool are in the top 5 of all of these lists. And they've never really been consistently up there in the past. They've sorted the commercial side out. They can just say to them, look, we've done this. We can get you a guarantee on your investment. And I think the one thing that the most critical people of any club owners don't quite accept is what's the best way of making a club more valuable by winning stuff. So it's counterproductive if you do not invest in the squad, in the team, and then everything else surrounding that. Because if you're winning stuff or challenging for stuff, because as Theo said, you can't always win everything. If you're challenging for stuff and you're winning the odd thing and you're up there and you're always competing, you get to finals, everybody's happy. And of course, then the investors will be happy as well, because the value of the club will be going up.
Yeah, I think if your biggest sole issue with the owner of the club you support is the fact that you're perhaps just not spending enough at certain points, I think ultimately you've got to consider that landscape as a healthy one, because, okay, well, Liverpool could have done more last summer, should have done more here, there, and wherever. Everything else is in place, isn't it? As a football club, self-sustainable, still one of the biggest clubs in the world, always in the mix for all these kind of Forbes valuations list and whatever else comes out on the business side of things. So I think they've done a lot more good than bad, as I said.
The other thing on that is, let's just say, for example, I suddenly get £3 billion and go, right, I'm going to take over Liverpool. You go in and you go, well, I'm not actually going to change anything here.
Exactly. Yeah,
I'm not going to change anything. There's just a bit more money to spend on the team.
So the focus here is win a few more trophies, which does bring us on to the next question. What should Liverpool be aiming for silverware-wise in the Premier League? Should they take the Europa League seriously? All these combined into one next season?
I think the Europa League seriously, yes, to a point. I think this, as we've said before, I think they'll use the group stage to give younger and fringe players a chance. When it gets to the latter stages, it depends on how things are going in the Premier League and other competitions, so we can't really guess too much on that one. From what we're led to believe, we know that the new Champions League revamp, that's happening the following season. So the qualification for that means that there are 2 extra spaces for the 2 countries that are the highest coefficient, and it would take an absolutely monumental collapse of all the English teams in the competition, all the European competition next season, for it not to be England. So it means
Arsenal and Newcastle are qualified, so you never know.
So the top 5 are likely to qualify for the Champions League next season. So I would say the first target is get into that top 5, because I think you're seeing with Arsenal, you're seeing with Man United, you're probably going to see with Chelsea next season, that you can have a season outside the Champions League. It's if it becomes a more regular thing. That's when issues happen. I know I've just mentioned Arsenal, they had a couple of years out of it, but I'm pretty sure that once they get back into it, everything's okay again. You know what I mean? It's like it hasn't made as much an impact, because if it would have done, then they wouldn't have been challenging for the title this year. They weren't even in Europe all the other year. So, while some fans are worried about the knock-on effect of not being in the Champions League, one season shouldn't make that much difference, I think. And I think that the target's going to be get back into that and possibly pick up a couple along the way, or certainly get to a final.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's too much of a leap to go from 5th to challenging Man City once more.
Well, it was the other way.
The thing is, Man City probably think that Liverpool are going to be challenging next season. I'll say that.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to say that, I'm expecting Liverpool to just go straight back to those levels and being City's closest challenger, but I suppose we'll only find out in the coming months. But certainly, the Europa League, they should be taking it seriously. You can still get through the group stages by using not necessarily your League Cup fringe players, but, the likes of Joel Matip and Joe Gomez and Curtis Jones and Darwin Núñez, maybe Luis Diaz, you can certainly get through the group stages without too much of an issue, I'd suggest, in the Europa League. And then
we'll revisit this in
yeah.
December when they get
And
there.
then from Christmas onwards, you got a little bit more of a handle on what's happening in the league and whatever else happening, and then you can really start to weigh it all up. But we'll see. Let's see if Liverpool can kind of make another giant step forward after a giant step backwards.
This could be the first normal season in about 4 years as well, because obviously 1920 got interrupted by COVID. 2021 was added one of the stadiums. 21-22 there was still that kind of lingering where players were missing out, and some grounds weren't as full as others. And this season just gone, had a big World Cup bang in the middle of it. So this could be a season where, I'm not saying things go back to normal, because what is normal, but I think we'll get a better idea where everybody is, all the teams, all the clubs, how the state that they're in this season as opposed to probably the last 2 or 3.
Well, with the Europa League, it is a way into the Champions League as well. And you look, is it Brighton and West Ham now are joining Liverpool? They are the strongest team in that competition. So that is that way into the Champions League. But with trophies, we've seen Liverpool win everything. Can Jurgen Klopp complete the set with the Europa League, or can he win one trophy next year? You said
I've said
this year.
I said that he should be looking to win one. Yeah, I think so.
Which one?
I don't know. This one hasn't even officially finished yet.
You love questions looking into the future, asking.
You know my thoughts on this. I would not be surprised if Liverpool won something next season.
That is a positive compared to what you were saying this time, I suppose 9 months ago, 10 months ago.
Well, there you go.
Keep that record going then, of your predictions being accurate. We'll take that, a trophy this year.
Yeah, I'd love to see Liverpool win the Europa League. The last time they won it was 2001, wasn't it?
The old UEFA Cup, yeah.
Yeah, came close in 2016, but for a terrible second half in Basel. It's just, have they got the fortitude to dig in and get through what is a difficult period in the group stages, I guess. It's only when the Europa League gets to the last stages it starts looking a bit glamorous. Those days, United away in Norway at R5 kickoff or whatever it may be, it's they're tough, aren't they? If you're not playing your strongest 11, which you'd imagine you're not going to be doing.
Also, it depends when Sevilla are going to drop into it.
Yeah, I was about to mention when Liverpool lost them in 2016, if they'd won, they'd have gone level as the side who was most successful in the competition. I think Sevilla have won it like 3 or 4 times since then, haven't they?
It's a very specific skill that they've got to not be good enough to get out of the Champions League groups, but to still be good enough to always compete in the Europa League. You've got to have a certain standard of not being particularly amazing, but still being quite good.
And there's also still that record of it's only Spanish teams that knock Liverpool out in Europe under Klopp. At least they won't face Real Madrid this year, you'd like to think, especially with Jude Bellingham.
You never know.
We've got just one question left, and this is a big one for you to predict. Will Jurgen Klopp win the Premier League or Champions League again during his Liverpool reign?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Let's put it this way. Ask Gorsty. I'm trying to win my.
Yeah, do you know what? I actually think for all the Klopp is known as one of the best managers around. I still think he's overlooked for his European pedigree. Got to the Champions League final with Dortmund, didn't he? He got to the Europa League final with Liverpool. He's got to 3 Champions League finals with Liverpool and won one of them. So I think you've got to be confident if Liverpool can get back in the Champions League that they'd have as much chance as anyone else to win it. If they do beef up the squad like we're hoping. So I'll say he can win a 7th European Cup.
What I would say is there's a lot of intrigue over Manchester City and how things might pan out for them in the next couple of years. So I think Liverpool might be as well placed as any to take advantage of anything if the situation changes at the Etihad.
I suppose Liverpool in Europe, there's always been mitigating circumstances for why it hasn't gone all the way in those years they've fallen short.
Yeah, the other teams have been better.
that is the starter point.
Playing Real Madrid in the training ground. Do you mean that kind of stuff?
Playing Real Madrid in the training ground, Salah...
The weird COVID game against...
The weird COVID game, Salah getting injured, Karius having a concussion, the fans not being there in Paris last year. There's always these sort of things that they haven't given Liverpool that 100% chance to have a go, apart from 2019 in Madrid.
Even then, it was because it was a billion degrees, and because we were playing Tottenham, it was another English team they were up against, so that helped. Because it would have been interesting if they played a Spanish team there.
It's not going to be a billion degrees in Dublin next year.
No, it is not. Although it's quite warm there today.
It was quite warm there at the weekend as well.
Of course, you were there, weren't you?
Yeah, I was indeed, getting a little preview of what it could be like next May.
Did you have a drink?
I had a few. I was wearing a lovely rainbow vest, and was it the Lancashire Hot
Pots? It is, yeah.
Yeah, you were, was it boyhood friends with one of them?
Yes, the bass player, yeah. I went to go with him. There's a little bit of knowledge there for everybody.
This is a weird way to end a Liverpool Big Four podcast, isn't it? But yeah,
we're everything for all people.
So yeah, if you've liked these answers and you want to have a go yourselves, there is a link somewhere. It's either in the description or on the screen now. I can't see it on my screen because I'm not watching it on Facebook because we don't want to hear ourselves talk and it'd be a bit weird for the quality. But yeah, go and dig it out. It's somewhere on the website, somewhere on YouTube, somewhere on Facebook. And we will be back as normal tomorrow for the Blood Red podcast. Are we on Thursday?
You're on Friday, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll probably repeat all of this on Alexis Mac Allister again tomorrow. But yeah, have your say. Oh, the link is up now. Have your say here. This is the link. Bit.ly. Oh, I can point now. There we go. This looks very professional, doesn't it?
Never get a job in television.
That's why I'm a writer. But yeah, we will be here again tomorrow. I'm getting distracted here. We'll be here again tomorrow for Blood Red Podcast, Friday edition, where we'll talk Alexis Mac Allister and anything else that breaks in the next 24 hours. Watch anything that's on our YouTube channel. It's brilliant. Stick to the website for pretty much all the Mac Allister reaction you can think of, with plenty more to come. We have been busy this week, even though you haven't seen it quite yet. And that's it for now. Until next time.